Hello students. Today we start Chapter 1. The Union Legislature. Introduction. Welcome to an exciting journey into the heart of Indian democracy. Have you ever wondered how laws are made in our country? Who decides how our government should spend money? How do we ensure that those in power remain accountable to us, the people? All these questions lead us to one of the most important institutions in India, the Parliament. India is the world's largest democracy, home to over 1.4 billion people. In a democracy, power ultimately belongs to the people. But with such a huge population, how can every citizen directly participate in making laws and running the government? This is where Parliament comes in. It is the supreme lawmaking body that represents the collective voice of all Indian citizens. When India became independent in 1947 and adopted its constitution on 26 January 1950, our leaders had to decide what kind of government system would work best for our diverse and vast country. After careful consideration, they chose a parliamentary form of government, inspired by the British Westminster model. This system ensures that the government always remains accountable to the people through their elected representatives. In this chapter, we will explore how our parliament works, who its members are, how they are elected, and what powers they have. Let's begin this fascinating exploration of the Union Legislature. Understanding the parliamentary form of government. Before we dive into the details of Parliament, let's first understand what a parliamentary system of government means and why India chose this system. What makes it parliamentary? In a parliamentary system, there is a very close and special relationship between two branches of government: the executive and the legislature. Think of it this way. The people who make laws, legislature, and the people who implement those laws, executive, work hand in hand. In fact, the executive is drawn from the legislature itself. This is quite different from a presidential system, like the one in the United States, where the president is elected separately and the executive branch is completely independent of the legislature. How does it work in India? Let me explain this with a simple sequence of events. When general elections are held in India, we, the people, vote to elect our representatives. These elected representatives come together to form the Lok Sabha, which is the lower house of Parliament. Now, here's the interesting part. The political party or group of parties that wins the majority of seats gets to form the government. The President of India, who is the constitutional head of our country, appoints the leader of this majority party or coalition as the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister then selects his or her team of ministers, called the Council of Ministers, primarily from among the elected members of Parliament. What makes this system truly democratic is the principle of collective responsibility. The Council of Ministers is not just responsible to the Prime Minister, but to the entire Lok Sabha. This means that if the Lok Sabha loses confidence in the government, the ministers must resign. This keeps the government always answerable to the people's representatives. The three pillars of democracy. Our constitution wisely divided governmental powers into three distinct branches. This division is like a system of checks and balances, ensuring that no single branch becomes too powerful. Let's understand each branch. The legislature, the lawmakers. The legislature is the lawmaking body of our government. At the national level, we call it Parliament. It consists of the President and two houses, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. The primary job of Parliament is to make, modify, and repeal laws for the entire country. When we say Parliament represents the will of the Indian people, we mean that it speaks for all of us because its members are elected by us. The executive, they implement is. The executive branch is responsible for putting laws into action and running the day-to-day administration of the country. At the union level, the executive includes the President, the Vice President, the Prime Minister, and the Council of Ministers. While the President is the nominal or constitutional head, meaning the head in name, the real executive power lies with the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. They make policy decisions and ensure the government functions smoothly. The judiciary, the interpreters. The judiciary interprets and defines the laws of our land. The Supreme Court sits at the top of our judicial system. The judiciary ensures that laws are applied fairly and that no one, not even government officials, violates the constitution or breaks the law. It acts as the guardian of our constitution and protects our fundamental rights. These three branches work together like three legs of a stool, supporting our democracy and keeping it balanced and stable. Why do we need both central and state governments? India is incredibly diverse. We have 28 states and 8 union territories, each with its own language, culture, and local issues. Imagine if a single government sitting in Delhi tried to handle every problem in every village, town, and city across the country. It would be impossible. That's why our constitution created a federal structure. This means governmental powers and responsibilities are shared between the central government, also called the union government, and state governments. The central government handles matters of national importance like defense, foreign affairs, and railways. State governments take care of local issues like police, agriculture, and local administration. Each state has its own legislature and government, following the same parliamentary pattern as the union level. This division allows both levels of government to work efficiently within their areas of responsibility, ensuring better governance for all citizens. The bicameral legislature. 2 houses, 1 parliament. Now let's talk about an important feature of our parliament. It has 2 houses. We call this a bicameral legislature. The word bicameral comes from Latin, meaning two chambers. Why 2 houses instead of 1? You might wonder why we need 2 houses when one could do the job. Well, there are several good reasons for this design. Different types of representation. The two houses represent different aspects of our democracy. The Lok Sabha directly represents us, the people, through elections. The Rajya Sabha represents the states and union territories of India. This dual representation ensures that both the voice of the people and the interests of states are heard when making laws. Better quality of laws. When a bill must pass through two houses, it gets examined more carefully from different perspectives. This prevents hasty or poorly thought out laws from being enacted. It's like getting a second opinion before making an important decision. Expertise and experience. The Rajya Sabha includes nominated members who are experts in fields like science, literature, and social service. These experienced individuals bring valuable knowledge to parliamentary debates and lawmaking. Continuity in work. While the Lok Sabha can be dissolved and elections held, the Rajya Sabha is a permanent house. This ensures that parliamentary work continues even during transitions between Lok Sabhas. The Lok Sabha, the House of the People. The Lok Sabha is called the House of the People because it directly represents us, the citizens of India. Although it's referred to as the lower house, this doesn't mean it's less important. In fact, in many ways, the Lok Sabha is more powerful than the Rajya Sabha, especially when it comes to financial matters and controlling the government. Who are its members? The maximum strength of the Lok Sabha can be 552 members. Let me break down how these seats are distributed. Representatives from states. Up to 530 members are elected directly by us, the voters, from different territorial constituencies across Indian states. Each state is divided into constituencies based on its population, and each constituency elects one member. Representatives from union territories. Not more than 20 members can be elected from union territories. These are smaller administrative units like Delhi, Puducherry, and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Nominated members. The President has the power to nominate two members from the Anglo-Indian community if he feels this community is not adequately represented in the House. At present, the Lok Sabha has 545 members, 543 elected and 2 nominated. How are they elected? The election process for the Lok Sabha is based on 2 fundamental democratic principles. Universal adult franchise. This is a cornerstone of our democracy. It means that every Indian citizen who has reached the age of 18 years has the right to vote regardless of their caste, class, color, religion, or gender. This principle recognizes that in a democracy, every adult has an equal stake in how the country is governed and therefore deserves an equal say in choosing representatives. Rich or poor, educated or uneducated, every adult's vote has the same value. This is what makes our democracy truly representative. Secret ballot. Elections to the Lok Sabha are conducted through secret ballot. This means that when you vote, your choice remains completely private and anonymous. No one can know whom you voted for unless you choose to tell them. Why is this important? Because secret voting prevents anyone from threatening, bribing, or pressuring voters. At polling stations, you cast your vote in complete privacy, ensuring free and fair elections. The Election Commission of India, an independent constitutional body, conducts these elections to ensure they are free, fair, and transparent. Who can become a member? Not everyone can become a member of the Lok Sabha. The Constitution sets certain qualifications to ensure that only capable and responsible people represent us in Parliament. Let's look at these qualifications. Indian citizenship. The person must be a citizen of India. This is obvious. Only Indians should represent India in Parliament. Age requirement. The person must be at least 25 years old. This ensures that members have sufficient maturity and life experience to handle the responsibilities of lawmaking. Mental soundness. The person should be mentally sound. Anyone declared of unsound mind by a competent court cannot become a member. Financial stability. The person should not be an insolvent, meaning they should not be drowning in debt that they cannot repay. Why? Because someone under severe financial pressure might be vulnerable to corruption or outside influence. No office of profit. The person should not hold an office of profit under the government. An office of profit is any position under the government that comes with a salary or benefits. This rule ensures that members remain independent and are not under the government's influence. Good character. The person should not be a proclaimed offender or convicted of serious crimes. We want people of good character and integrity to serve in Parliament. Voter registration. The person must have their name on the electoral rolls somewhere in the country, confirming their status as a voter. These qualifications ensure that our Parliament has worthy representatives who can serve the nation effectively. How long do they serve? The Lok Sabha is elected for a term of 5 years from the date of its first meeting. However, this term is not set in stone and can change under certain circumstances. Early dissolution. The President of India can dissolve the Lok Sabha before its 5-year term ends. This usually happens when the government loses the support of the majority of members, making it impossible to run the country effectively. When the Lok Sabha is dissolved, fresh elections must be held within 6 months. Extension during emergency. If the country faces a national emergency, like a war or serious internal disturbance, the life of the Lok Sabha can be extended by 1 year at a time through an Act of Parliament. However, this extension cannot continue beyond 6 months after the emergency ends. Nominated members. The President nominates 12 members from among people who have achieved distinction in various fields such as literature, science, art, and social service. This is a beautiful provision that brings eminent scholars, artists, scientists, and social workers into parliamentary discussions. These are people who might not be interested in active politics but have valuable expertise to contribute. Currently, the Rajya Sabha has 245 members, 233 elected and 12 nominated. Qualifications for membership. The qualifications for Rajya Sabha membership are similar to the Lok Sabha, with one key difference. The person must be a citizen of India, be at least 30 years of age, notice this is 5 years higher than the Lok Sabha requirement, be a registered voter in their state or union territory, and meet the same requirements regarding mental soundness, financial stability, and good character as Lok Sabha members. The higher age requirement reflects the Rajya Sabha's role as a more mature, deliberative body that provides thoughtful and experienced consideration of legislation. A permanent house. Unlike the Lok Sabha, the Rajya Sabha is a permanent house. It cannot be dissolved by the President. This is a very important feature that ensures continuity. Even when the Lok Sabha is dissolved and elections are being held, the Rajya Sabha continues to function, ensuring that parliamentary work never completely stops. Members of the Rajya Sabha serve for 6 years. However, the entire house is never up for election at once. Instead, 1/3 of its members retire every 2 years. This rotation system ensures both continuity and regular renewal. Members who retire can be re-elected or renominated, allowing experienced legislators to continue contributing to Parliament. The Vice President of India serves as the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha, meaning he holds this position by virtue of being the Vice President. The chairman presides over Rajya Sabha meetings and maintains order. When the chairman is absent, a deputy chairman elected by Rajya Sabha members takes over. The powers and functions of Parliament. Now comes the most important part. What does Parliament actually do? Parliament performs numerous vital functions that make it the cornerstone of Indian democracy. Let's explore these functions in detail. Making laws for the nation. The primary and most important function of Parliament is making laws. But Parliament doesn't make laws randomly. There's a clear system for which subjects it can legislate on. Our Constitution divides legislative subjects into 3 lists. The Union list contains 97 subjects of national importance. These include defense, foreign affairs, atomic energy, railways, airways, banking, currency, and communications. Only Parliament has the power to make laws on these subjects. Why? Because these are matters that affect the entire country and need uniform laws everywhere. The state list contains subjects of local and regional importance, such as police, public health, agriculture, irrigation, and local government. State legislatures primarily make laws on these subjects because they understand local needs better. The concurrent list contains 47 subjects on which both Parliament and state legislatures can make laws. These include education, forests, marriage, adoption, and contracts. However, if there's a conflict between a union law and a state law on a concurrent subject, the union law prevails. Parliament also has residuary powers, meaning it can make laws on any subject not mentioned in any of the three lists. This ensures Parliament can legislate on new topics that emerge as society evolves. In special circumstances, Parliament can even make laws on state list subjects. For example, when the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution saying it's necessary in the national interest, or during a national emergency, or when states request Parliament to do so. Most importantly, only Parliament can amend our Constitution, though certain amendments require approval from at least half of the state legislatures. Controlling the nation's finances. Parliament, especially the Lok Sabha, has tremendous power over how government money is raised and spent. This is called the power of the purse, and it's fundamental to democracy. Every year, the government presents the union budget to Parliament. The budget is an estimate of how much money the government expects to receive through taxes and other sources, and how it plans to spend that money. Parliament examines this budget in great detail. Here's the crucial point: not a single rupee can be raised through taxation or spent by the government without Parliament's approval. This ensures that the government cannot misuse public money. Money bills, which deal with taxation, government spending, or borrowing, have special rules. They must be introduced first in the Lok Sabha. The Rajya Sabha can examine a money bill and suggest changes, but it must do so within 14 days. The Lok Sabha can accept or reject these suggestions. If the Rajya Sabha doesn't return the bill within 14 days, or if the Lok Sabha doesn't accept its suggestions, the bill is considered passed anyway. This gives the Lok Sabha supreme power in financial matters.